So the Patriots have a new head coach. And as we record here midday Tuesday, the last 5 days have brought a lot. Not only Mike Vrabel on Sunday, and before that, a column I'm writing shotgun with my in-laws down to a belated Christmas on Saturday, anticipating Mike Vrabel get hired. And Ben Johnson was interviewed before that. Then we had a press conference introducing Mike Vrabel as said head coach. He was on the radio this morning. We've had theories about Eliot Wolf, how things are going to get reorganized and relabeled. And I just said, you know what? I'm a little bit tired. So in the name of yet another new era in New England, we are going to bring up for the first time El Presidente, John Zannis, of CLNS Media, to sit and watch me bask in this tiredness, in this malaise, in this laziness, some would say, of what's going to happen here. And normally this would be a solo show, but I also thought it'd be better to bring John on, a longtime veteran of this medium, and obviously my boss in this capacity, to just kind of balance me sitting alone, talking to myself, and still get to the heart of so much we have to get to the Mike Vrabel era. And you were there Monday for the press conference.
Yeah. And I finally got you. I've gotten on everybody's show. I find my way. I find my way on, but I promise not to get too much in the way. But yeah, I was there, and again, it was. I mean, I always find these things entertaining and funny. These coach hiring, because you got a bunch of media there trying to do their jobs, and then like a bunch of people clapping, and it's always a bit of a spectacle. But there's a lot you can glean from it, and I think, especially, Andrew, as you compare it to the Gerard Mayo press conference from a year ago, just how night and day it was. Just in terms of, I guess the phrase that comes to mind with Mike Vrabel is command presence. And he really had it. And is nailing your introductory press conference the most important thing in terms of becoming a successful head coach? No, but it's a nice start.
Yeah, just ask Joe Judge. Supposedly nailed his introductory press conference and lost 70% of his games with the Giants. So
right.
We're going to get into that press conference, what Vrabel said. Granted, it's been a little bit longer than 24 hours since Mike spoke. So by the time you hear this or watch this, it gets a little bit more stale. He did have some notable comments this morning on WEEI, and we're going to dive into comments he also gave to Tommy Curran, our pal, about Eliot Wolf's role and what Eliot may or may not have dealt with last year, and then look ahead, because it looks like Josh McDaniels is primed for round 3. And I don't know how many coaches in NFL history have worked for the same team in the same position, but Josh McDaniels, come on down. Meantime, I want to give a quick shout out to Game Time and Prize Picks for always sponsoring us here on the podcast, and they will continue throughout next year, which is awesome considering they've been good to me on a personal level. They've been good to the show. And I don't know, we love the good folks. You'll deal with them more than I do, but I know they've been at least fun as a user and sponsor.
What's important is that they love you, and they keep coming back, which is really all that matters.
Yeah. All right. So big takeaways for Monday. What we liked from Mike Vrabel the last 24 hours. What we didn't like, because you know what? It's not as much as we're in the honeymoon phase. There are going to be moments when things are didn't love that. What did he mean? Getting back to his comment about Eliot Wolf, leftover quotes and notes. I want you to pick one thing that I've listed here in a rundown, and then what's next. And then some league sources who Doug and I talked to over the weekend about Mike Vrabel and the things that most interest you there. But you already hit on this. When you listened to Mike Vrabel, when you watched him, there was just a calm and a command and a clarity in his vision. And you just feel like there's no more North Star nonsense. Like, this man knows what he wants. He knows how to get there. He knows what he looks like. And most importantly, as I wrote today for the Herald, not only is he talking the talk, he's kind of walking the walk. And the two quick examples that I gave, and I'm curious if you noticed this or put any stock into it or don't at all, was just like Gerard, he's talking about making connections. I want to make connections with the players so I can read them out, but they know it's coming from a place of love. He finishes his press conference, and the first two people he greets are not his boss, Robert Kraft. It's not his wife, Jen, who are the two people seated closest to him up at the podium. He, in fact, walks by both of them to get to David Andrews and Joe Cardona. Before that, he also cites an example of what he told players as he met briefly with them and chit-chat. And here's a quote, which speaks to his brutal honesty, as we all know Mike Vrabel's famous for. We just want to be good enough to take advantage of bad football. That's what I've tried to tell all the players. I don't know if we're good enough right now to take advantage of bad football. So the whole day is about talking the talk. But, John, I look at this and felt it and watched him from afar and said he's already walking the walk, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, you hit it on the head, and those were all of the points. Is he did a really good job of being, both like humble, forthcoming, but also not really necessarily revealing much, but staying on point, staying on message, having a clear vision. If you can compare it to, I hate making everything a referendum on Gerard Mayo's tenure as a coach. But again, it really is a night and day sort of vibe to it. I remember, and again, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but like, he's got an idea what he wants to do. We don't know whether or not it's going to translate to wins, but it's very clear he has an idea of what he wants to do here and what kind of coach he wants to be. I'm pulling up a Mayo quote from his press conference, asked about his vision for the offense. The answer was, I would say energy, the passion, the leaders on the offensive side of the ball. You got to have that stuff in place. What does that mean? It didn't mean anything, and Vrabel was very clear about some of the stuff he was talking about. And I loved, that was one of my favorite things in addition to the presence was that he's talking about the offense. He's talking about it early because he knows, what do you have going for you here in New England? You got one thing, you've got Drake May and really nothing else. And so that was, if he addressed anything in terms of specifics to personnel and football, it's, we got to protect him. We got to maximize him. We got to make sure that Drake May is supported and in a position to kind of help lead the team here. So again, he had it going on. He looked the part, he acted the part. And I think, if you're going to grade it, that was an A+ press conference from Vrabel.
What plus?
Yeah,
it was strike me as an easy grader, John. I mean, shit, you have me still here on the network after all these years, so I don't like. I take it back. Maybe that does make you an easy grader, but like an A+.
It's just so refreshing. Look, and what's interesting to me is like, it's so funny just the vision and how you get from one place to, from Belichick to Mayo to Vrabel. It's like, this one's too hot, this one's too cold, but the third one was just right. Perfect. And that's kind of hit that tone, and that's what's interesting here is, I always thought the Mayo missteps had a lot to do with not being enough like Belichick in the areas that he needed to be. And Vrabel presents himself as a guy who's going to bridge that gap in between, which is, as you mentioned before, he is a player's type coach. He's the type of guy, if you do what I tell you to do and stay on point and work hard, I'm going to be your best buddy in the world. Whereas Gerard Mayo was kind of like a first-time parent who's like, I'm going to let my kids, and eat chocolate cake and do whatever they want. And then you lose control and you're like, holy crap, I can't get these guys to listen to me anymore. So you get the sense of Vrabel's going to, at least they're going to listen to what he has to say. Again, we'll see whether that translates to anything, but that's the vibe you got off of it. And I think that's refreshing considering just what a catastrophe almost every aspect of last season was as far as that was concerned.
It was. You mentioned the offense, and I think there was, to go back a second, grading it. I
want to go back a second to something you said, because I'm going to stir the pot a tad, but go ahead.
Okay. The podcast's famous for bouncing around. It's just living up to its reputation, even with the first time guest. The point I'm going back to is just to say, that he got this A+. I called it a tie today in my column, which is perfect. This is naturally a more performative day with the press conference, and you need to win this and that. People say, oh, did they lose the press conference? Whatever. No one cares. Like, football is played on the field. Yeah. It's coached in the field. I say this as someone whose job is tied to these events. I don't care. But the things that I was encouraged by are what we just talked about, the clarity. Now, when he was discussing the offense, what I liked is that he seemed to speak authentically of, we want to be versatile enough, okay? We don't want to dabble in everything. We want to weaponize motions and shifts, but also do it with a purpose, and everything starts up front. So he's saying things that still live in the realm of like cliches and obvious points, but delivers it so that you're galvanizing a fan base, which he wants to do, and also getting a point across subtly that says, it's up front. The offensive lines get a lot of his attention. That's how they were built in Tennessee. But secondary to that is an efficient passing game. I don't know if this is a Cleveland thing with him coming from, the most analytically driven organization in the NFL, but that to me caught my attention when it's like, we don't want to throw the ball over the yard. And he said something this morning on EI we're going to get to later, but the offensive stuff, it wasn't like we're going to be conservative, but it kind of indicated that. And we're going to get back to more meat and potatoes here, starting with the offensive line.
Yeah, and that was it. It asked point blank, right? Number 4 pick. That was the question there. What do you plan on doing in this and that? And he just said, look, you can't do anything in football unless you can protect the quarterback. So he threw that out straight away as a thing, and supporting Drake May and getting people around Drake May to make his job easier. We might even have a bite here on it. We're gonna play for you.
Develop him as a leader of the offense, and when a quarterback, when they call the play, like, you want to say, like, everybody's going to believe that it's going to score a touchdown. like with that type of emphasis on how everything is going to operate. And, Drake is going to be his own person, but I'm going to give him some things that I feel like are necessary to help us win football games. We have to be a very efficient passing football team.
Efficient. There's that word.
There it is.
That can mean a lot of things, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, I'm going to speak in a way that I'm not just bullshitting you right away, but I'm going to, I'm going to come off as saying true things, but truly not tip my hand. Good job. That's a guy in command who's in control, who's doing what he needs to that day, and then gets on to the real football. The last thing that I think is fair to say that we definitely took away in these kind of big takeaways from Monday, the shotgun marriage. Eliot Wolf, he named him 6 times, okay, indicating they're collaborate. He didn't give a straight answer on who has roster control. Those decisions will sort themselves out.
Yeah, Andrew, I think that's the biggest thing by far. This isn't clear. The shotgun marriage, it's weird. I think the picture's probably like they know what they're going to do. And I think, in his guy, and I mean, even Adam Schefter goes on the Pat McAfee Potter, and they're
is the man.
They're pushing him. Who's got final say? And he just Vrabel's just the man. And they're and that's the vibe, right? It's going to be
don't forget the clapping. Just a ton of this going on. Anybody, no matter what they say, just good job by you.
Yeah, and so he's coming in, and that's probably that. So the question is, can it work? Like, let's assume that that's what's going on here. I can't see a world. You're not going to do this again, this collaborative thing. Someone's got to be in charge. It doesn't have to, it's not just football operations. It doesn't matter what line of work you're in. Someone's got to make a final decision. Do we just assume Vrabel is the guy making the final decision? And then who's he going to lean on? Is he going to lean on his guy? Probably. That doesn't mean he wouldn't listen to others, but now are you developing factions? Well, I didn't want this guy. He wanted this guy. That's a problem. You already saw a lot of finger pointing at the end of the year between Mayo and Wolf and Wolf's department on, well, I thought the players would develop better. That's a shot at Mayo, and Mayo saying, I don't know if these guys are necessary. So you can't have that. If everybody's going to play nice in the sandbox, that's okay, but you got to be perfectly clear. Otherwise, I don't see how the existing personnel can stay for much longer if they're not going to concede that, hey, these guys are kind of running it and we're okay taking a back seat in this case.
So a couple things on this. Number one, because I know I've said this elsewhere, I can still envision 3 different scenarios related to Eliot Wolf and how this ends up. Number one, he keeps his title and role and all the power that it comes with as the head of the personnel department and roster controller, at least the most significant input in that department. Number 2 is he takes a demotion in mid-May when normally the front offices in the league all reshuffle. And Ryan Cowden, coming over from the Giants, but before that Tennessee, when he worked with Vrabel, will be de facto GM, whatever you want to call it. Or come mid-May, Eliot Wolf says, I'll go elsewhere. This is not what I signed up for. This is not what the plan was. And this is as much on Gerard as it is the Crafts, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I still believe in number 2 is because he's a scout at heart. Like that's who he is. Now, that being said, I do think there will be a feeling out process here from Vrabel and Eliot Wolf, who we know this morning, talk about things that we'd like that we've heard since then. He said on EEI, I spent multiple hours with Eliot this morning. We went over the roster, went over staffing, what we need to do, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a world in which Mike Vrabel and Eliot Wolf are like, you know what? Let's date for 4 months and see how it goes by the end. Maybe this works out because Mike is going to.
But it's but it's going to be an open relationship.
Right. Like I respect your resume as much as everyone in New England thinks that they've got Eliot Wolf figured out based on one bad draft class and one underwhelming free agent class in the year that they were trying to reset the roster. He goes, you were in Green Bay, model franchise in terms of team building and discipline, been an assistant GM, all this different stuff. Let's see what you got. Okay. And at the end, he just might go, you're not for me. And I'm going to go with my guy that I know who's already going to come in the building. Or he goes, maybe this can work. The one thing I'll say this, though, Ryan Cowden coming in to be Eliot Wolf's number 2 says to me, John, Eliot doesn't have the power. Because if you had the power, you get to pick your right-hand man.
Right.
And in a scenario, inevitably, that it comes up in free agency or the draft, where Vrabel and Ryan Cowden, who are aligned and we're in Tennessee about a player, and Eliot Wolf says, I disagree, number 1's going to lose out, which really doesn't make you number 1 at all.
Yeah. And again, whichever of the scenarios you point out, I think the final conclusion is Eliot Wolf will not have final say over personnel matters. Eliot Wolf may be able to coexist with the new world order that starts with Mike Vrabel at the top and involves, a collaborative effort with his guy, Ryan Cowden, or he leaves. And I think that's clear. And it's been honestly pretty clear since even Robert Kraft spoke after for the Gerard Mayo firing press conference and asked about it. And he's like, he's gonna stick around. But it had a very for now sort of feel. So yeah, this one is a little bit weird, and I think will continue to be, but I actually probably think Vrabes has a good idea where he's going to be going with this, and it's probably not going to end up being much of an issue. Talked about other things that we liked from this press conference, and again, one of the things that I liked, and I know a lot of people have hit on it, and I'm just going to throw it up there, and I'm curious why this word choice was Vrabel here talking about basically clean slate, but you got to earn your place here.
We're going to remove entitlement from our football team. We're going to get everything that we've earned from the head coach to the position coaches, all the way down to the players. And we're going to earn the right to be here every single day.
So, look, it makes sense for a coach to say something along the lines of, everyone starting in here, you come in, you work hard, you're going to do this, you do that. Removing something like entitlement means Mike Vrabel has seen and sniffed out a bit of entitlement that he thinks here might have taken place last year among some players. So it feels like he's got a red laser pointer already kind of fixated on some people who he might have heard or did not like or could see from afar or has done his own investigation to say, I don't know where these guys are coming from, but holy crap, is that not going to stand? That's how I read that there are people in this organization he 100%. Views might have been a little entitled. And that's kind of a watch your ass here. Like that's not gonna work.
And I don't know if this is personal or a strictly professional sense. I don't get the sense that Vrabel had a lot of regard for the way the Patriots were doing football business last year on the field. And it could have been the comments in the media from the players. It could have been comments from Mayo. Again, I don't know his relationship with Mayo. They were teammates very briefly, okay? And obviously coached in the league for most of the last 4 or 5 years. But for him to say that, the word remove is doing so much heavy lifting there. It's not, when I initially heard it, I'll admit, like, it was within the context of him talking about NIL, and there's a new type of player, and we need to get accustomed to that, be able to coach them and move forward because they have expectations, and it's not the same old player we've been dealing with. I was like, oh, there's the entitlement. I'm 18. I have a 6-figure contract, depending on where I went to college, sometimes multi-million-dollar contract. And then you get to the NFL, and it's just like college, going from high school to college. They've got to de-recruit you. And then listening back, I was like, oh, no, he's saying it's here right now, and we've got to rip it out by the roots. Yeah. And that's going to happen, I think, whenever you have an old school coach, which is really what Vrabel is at heart. But that says, not only have I seen it and heard it from afar, but in his full week of being able to prepare and interview and look around the league, like he's had, even before then, because the consulting job was not part-time, but it didn't take up every single day like a coaching job would in Cleveland. He had time to dig this out and call people and learn and ask. And obviously that was some part of what he dug up in that whole process.
Yeah, which also leads you to believe the people who he talked to might have thought it was an even bigger issue than we even made it out to be. And we made it out to be a pretty big issue because these media missteps and people kind of talking out of school popped up early, and it infected almost every single position group. This was endemic. It wasn't just, a couple of guys. It was everywhere. And my guess is the people he talked to, there must have been some eye rolls like, yeah, man, it was bad. So this is something he's coming in clearly with a, top of list sort of thing. Like, yeah, we're not doing that at all. So I'm going to circle back to something that you talked about earlier in terms of the reception that he got and Vrabel going in and talking to the players. We're also, as you mentioned, going to talk about some things we might not have fully liked that came out of the press conference and some interesting comments that we got to figure out how we're going to read into that, because Vrabel, I don't like a couple of the things that he said. Either it be, I'm curious about the Tom Curran comment. We'll talk about that. And I really, really don't like the throwing and running comment, which we're going to hit on in just a little bit. But first off, we're going to take a pause. We're going to hear from one of those wonderful sponsors of ours.
You know what? It's sad. Football season, pretty much over. But you can still play and win with a new game. Prize Picks the best place to get real money sports action anywhere. And I'm talking up to, get this, 1,000 times your cash. Go to Prize Picks right now, where everyone can have fun with daily fantasy sports. It's the most accessible. It's the simplest app out there. All you have to do, pick 2 to 6 players. Each comes with a stat. You look at their next game. You think they'll get more or you think you'll get less. Lock it in, and there it is. You can have a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash by picking as few as 2 players. If you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, 50 for just $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
There's a little voice crackle there, Andrew. I just noticed
I hear it every time. We need to do a new one.
We might have to do that one again.
Just squeaking out at the end.
I really like this ad.
I thought I forgot in high school, and there it is, just reminding me every time we do that. Prize Picks.
I will say, I don't like to flex very often, but smashed it last week. I got to tell you, and it was easy because you just picked the stars.
Your playoff picks? Yeah.
I smashed. I only did the Saturday picks. It was Nico Moore on yards. Nico, the touchdown, 0.5 on the touchdown. Derrick Henry more on yards. And the easiest one by far, as we were talking about entitlement, was Lad McConkey. Speaking of, who will be linked to the Patriots probably for the rest of his life. More on that one. He smashed going 197 yards there. And that's going to hurt every single time something like that happens. But yes, for those of you out there, check it out. Playoffs is a really fun time, and the stars are out. A lot of good options here. As Andrew said, download the app, promo code CLNS to get moving here. Some things we didn't like from the Mike Vrabel press conference. Now,
let me give you a couple ones I still like, because these are
you still like things.
And very obvious. Yes. Is number one, his stated goals, right? Like before with Gerard, and we're going to do the comparison thing. This happens with every new coach that comes in and, hold it up in one hand and then the old guy or the new guy in the other. He said, look, we need to take advantage of bad football. Then we're going to win the AFC East, and we plan to host home playoff games and compete for championships. Perfect. Natural, normal progression. It's not, we're trying to win and find foundational pieces, even if that's reasonable, because it just, the goalpost moved. Number 2 was a quote from Troy Brown. And this obviously was after the press conference. We chat with him. He's there to support. Don't know if he's going to be on staff, and they were teammates long ago. I asked him, hey, do you remember what it was like preparing for those Titans teams when you were on staff? And he said, quote, we knew we had to be tough. We just had to be tough and fundamentally sound to go up against a team that was coached by him. Kind of the same thing you would say about Bill. And Troy Brown will say nice things to the media about his players and coaches, not always deliver. But look, you and I watched those teams. And the first time Mike Vrabel went up against Bill Belichick, the Titans kicked their ass.
He pantsed him. Yeah.
And then we'll won the wild card playoff game. So it's just a little cool hearing that from the inside.
Yeah, that was good. And you mentioned earlier, and we'll put a bow on this portion of the pod there. One thing you liked about Vrabel, and I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm gonna stir the pot a tad, but I think it's worth talking about because you said afterwards he comes off there and he goes right to David Andrews and Joe Cardona, who were seated there to take in the press conference. I will say I was actually slightly surprised, and other people who attended there were the personnel guys. Which was Groh and Wolf and such. I was actually surprised there weren't more players there. And if you go back to Gerard Mayo's press conference, I remember at the very least, Juwan Bentley, Jonathan Jones, Josh Uche was there. Even Mac Jones attending his own funeral, was at that one walking around. But
you thought there was a non-zero chance he might show up again, didn't you?
I would have loved it. You might as well have put a Mac Jones uniform on Eliot. But it might be the same path there, but you also had Devin McCourty, Rob Ninkovich, former players. I know you mentioned Troy Brown there. And so I was a little surprised there wasn't a bigger presence there. And I do wonder how many, this is the one thing about Gerard Mayo is there was a ding dong, the witch is dead sort of vibe among the media because of so many things that we saw that seemed functionally that they just weren't working out, bordering on incompetence, or just kind of unpreparedness. He wasn't ready. It seemed evident, but throughout all of these obvious missteps and fireable offenses that we were picking up on throughout the year, players still stuck by him pretty much to the end, all the way to the final press conference. And it's not just old vets. Even Demario Douglas, I'd be pretty bummed if he gets fired. All the way through Dietrich Wise, you have some guys there who still supported him. And I do wonder if there is a faction of Patriots players, not to say they won't get over it, who might feel like he got done dirty.
Yeah, and look, I talked to people in the organization who weren't even in the locker room and kind of felt that way. They felt Gerard, worked well, communicated clearly, like all the things we would not say out here on the media and listening to him in the press conferences, where just the amazing fact that reporters who were doing this Wednesday and Friday, as we did with Bill Belichick, some small part of us was rooting for him to revert back to Bill in a way of just save yourself. This is so easy. Do it out of self-interest. And
so easy.
Got there a little bit too late. And I don't think had a big part in his downfall. It was the football first and foremost. But I think, John, that just speaks to the next time we go through this, the next time any Boston team goes through this, don't listen to the players on that. Because you know who else listened to the players on that? Mark Davis out in Las Vegas, who kept another linebacker who was a crappy head coach, and Antonio Pierce. And what seemed like a coup at the time when Josh McDaniels leaves and Devontae Adams is happy and Max Crosby, and they're all going, oh, hired this guy. Well, then Pierce is out of a job because he stunk at it and probably wasn't ready for it. So I just filed that one away for good. I don't know if it's a commandment of sports. Players don't get to pick the head coaches, and there's the move of that.
And there's I think some people kind of conflate liking the guy versus thinking that he's a good head coach. Again, most of the reasoning for keeping Mayo was, well, he's new and he deserves another shot. That vibe wasn't that he's doing such a good job right now that how could you not bring him back? It was, hey, I like him, and I think he deserves another whack at it. And which I always thought I do think some people in the media and some fans as well might have placed a little bit too much stock on, well, he's got the support of the locker room. It doesn't really matter. And you're right. They're not always the best judges of whether or not something's going to work out. What did you not like from the Mike Vrabel press conference? I gave it an A, so I guess I can't say anything.
Yeah, so I'll go back to the ride.
I have questions, but I wouldn't say there's stuff I didn't like. I still have a lot of questions after he spoke. That's all.
Well, this is your big question, which we'll revisit. Ryan Cowden, 25-year vet, NFL front offices, obviously overlap with Vrabel in Tennessee. He's going to come in, and he's the number 2. And there are these, roster control is something that is going to be resolved on its own. And that's probably Vrabel's way of saying, as I threw out there possibly, I'll date Eliot. We'll see how the next 4 months go. If this works out, great. We'll keep it number 1. If not, my guy is going to be number 2. But, John, are you familiar? Because I said this in your old home on the airwaves last night on NBC. Are you familiar with the cuckoo bird?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the reference.
Tell me Ryan Cowden's not a cuckoo bird. I mean, a species that does not make its own nests. It goes in, kicks out the eggs and the baby birds, and then the mother of said baby birds who were left in that nest comes back and raises the cuckoo birds on its own, thinking that it's her own. There's a better term than baby birds. That to me just feels like what Ryan Cowden is right now. A cuckoo bird coming in to kick stuff out and then be the one who gets to live there, because that seems to be the plan from the back door, which is not like so secretive. We're talking about it, but it's just not a great way to go about things. And maybe it was something Vrabel just had to agree to. The Crafts were like, look, we really like Eliot. We want you to get to know him, learn from him. He's an asset. I do think as a scouting mind, he's an asset, maybe not the top of a front office. But it's a little backdoor. And I got to tell you, on very, very limited feedback I've gotten from other people around the league, there's some, mixed reviews on Cowden so far. And it's something I would go out and write right away, but we can talk about here on the pod because I need to talk to more people, understand why that is. But that's the initial feedback.
That's the thing. It's almost like, Yelp reviews, it's like, you go, so you've only been to 2 Thai restaurants. You think one of them's the best one you've ever had in your life, but you only have that experience. And so I don't know whether or not I trust your opinion on that, because you know what you know. Like, people have their comfort zones. They're guys that they work with and it worked out. You have no idea if they're the best for the job, but you just know that the guy who's making the decisions, in this case, Mike Vrabel, feels good about it. But I have no idea whether or not you're bringing in somebody who's more qualified than the existing personnel department to make decisions. If he's going to select the right players and make the right choices and give the give free agents or pick the right free agents and pay the right amount and sign good contracts. I have no idea. We have no idea if it'll work. All we know is Mike Vrabel likes him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And look, that's how most of this goes. And I tried to stress last week, like the N in NFL might as well stand for nepotism. And
Yeah.
it's not just Steve Belichick and Brian Belichick coming up the coaching ranks in New England
Everybody
while
does
their
it.
dad's a head
You
coach.
go somewhere, you bring everybody you worked with before.
All your friends, whether
Yeah.
they're good at it or not, just because you like them. So as much as everyone talks about meritocracy is just not. The other thing, and you hit on this earlier, was this morning. And Vrabel's talking to WEI, and this is a personal thing. Some people might love to hear this. But what he had said was, I think we have the quote here. He's talking about the connection between winning and certain statistics. Okay. And so he says, you don't have to throw it 50 times. I think an interesting stat was quarterbacks that attempt more than 50 passes at 5-0 a game have won 22% of their games, other than Tom Brady. He's won like 70%, that he's had to throw more than 45 times or something. So if you don't have Tom Brady, you probably shouldn't throw it 45 to 50 games, saying basically throw it less and you'll win. And my answer would be, well, if you're winning, you're throwing it less and you're rushing more. Like he's implying a causal relationship between run pass ratio that's just not there. The lead leads to the latter. Like that's how this goes. And even said 4-minute drill like that. When you get in those, you can kill the clock. That's when you win games. Well, the 4-minute drill starts with the lead that you're killing clock in the first place. That's what sends up the rushing attempts. It's not a magic number you have to get to, which for, again, a guy who just came from a very analytically driven franchise. I'm like, Mike, like this is, I agree. It's good to run and have some semblance of balance here and unpredictability. But running more is not this magic elixir to winning in the same way that passing more is not an avenue to losing.
It's such specious reasoning because of exactly that. I mean, teams who throw a ton are trailing typically by a lot. I looked up some numbers here. Almost 3,200 regular season games have been played since Vrabel became a head coach, and only 157 have featured 50 or more pass attempts. It's just not a thing that you do.
Just get to 49. Just hang out. It's fine.
On top of that, almost
Yeah.
all of the losses of those 50 attempts, a huge amount of them is more than 10 points, which shows you're way behind. You're throwing because you're behind and you're running to protect leads. So I mean, that's like gaslighting us, saying, and that bugs me a little bit. Like, you can't think we think that's sound reasoning, right? Like, are you just kind of laying the foundation here for like, I had this guy named Derrick Henry and I ran the crap out of him and it worked out pretty well. And I think I'd like to kind of do that thing again because
I think what it is a manifestation of like the defensive head coach. And Mike has a more worldly view of football. Again, worked with the tight ends, worked with the offensive linemen in Cleveland, certainly spent a ton of time on special teams, has worked with different coaches and systems and philosophies. Okay. He's not defensive only. But when you come from that type of background, hell, even Belichick and the Manning cast last night, just dismissing the refs like, oh, they're going to give it more points. It's all this and that. The league is slanted against defense. You look at the game through that prism of just don't get in the way of my side of the ball. And that means running. It means killing clock. Typically being a little bit more conservative, even if the efficiency he's looking for in the passing game is there, if you're willing to throw a little bit more, as if you have to call this an extension of your running game with a lot more quick game. So like that I think is what it is. Like he is an old soul, only 49 years old, but the way he seems to view the game is still through a lens that doesn't feel like someone who came through Cleveland. You could rightfully say, hey, Callahan, like why is Cleveland this beacon of like football knowledge? I'd be like, okay, fair. They haven't won a ton of games, but I think we know by now the stuff that he just said is not entirely true.
So that's the thing. And so again, I'll air my grievances on it. I was a Ben Johnson guy. So there's no reason to hide it. And I talked about it here on the, on CLNS media, and I gave my reasons for why. And I think it's many of the reasons you would understand. I don't know if he's going to be a
sore loser, John. That's all. So that's what this is.
So yeah, fine. I'm going to get my pound of flesh out of this thing. Look, and that's exactly why is Vrabel is a bit of a dinosaur, even though only 49, he's probably trending. He's 49 going on 59 or 69 in terms of his NFL kind of philosophy and the way that he looks at things. I am a little bit concerned. One thing I wish was asked at the press conference, and nobody got a chance to, was his experience with analytics in Cleveland as being a thing. And honestly, I found that a little curious. There was a piece, I believe, in The Athletic about kind of highlighting how he's evolved over the course of the year. And I don't know. I don't know whether that was just putting a shine on his image as kind of this dinosaur. He came free last year, and people weren't necessarily knocking down his door. And some of the knocks on him were exactly that, was a little bit old school, reliant on the run, not reliant enough on analytics. I don't know that he's going to completely change his stripe. Is it stripes or spots? I never know, but I'm not sure in a year he's coming in here and being a totally different guy. Like, I've reached this epiphany or revelation of like what I need to be as a coach. I think, as you said, we saw it with Bill Belichick, you lean on things that are comfortable for you. And that's just kind of what you know. And that's what you consider safe and right. Analytics or anything else be damned. The other thing was exactly that, is you don't know offensive. You're only as good as your OC when you're a defensive minded coach. So can you pick the right guy? Maybe. But what happens when you do pick the right guy? They leave. And that's why I like the idea of an offensive minded coach, because the system is here forever. It stays with them. And you hire people who can execute your vision, as opposed to, let me bring somebody in here and hope that they can do cool things with Drake May. So those were not answered for me there. And then I saw this quote about the running, and I was like, what? It's not what I wanted to see. And it's not how and there was a few other kernels there too about being aggressive, but not reckless. And that, to me, that exact bite kind of said the same thing. Like, we're not going to sling it around the yard and just have Drake going out there and scrambling and running RPOs and putting him in harm's way. We're going to be aggressive, but we're smart about it. And that's, like I said, I feel like laying the groundwork for, it's gonna not be quite as sexy as you might have hoped, because that's not how I do things here.
Yeah, and we'll get to the OC in a second, because it's a great point. And after the offensive coordinator, you're talking then about the quarterback's coach and the offensive line coach. Like, those hires together might be just as important as the head guy. Understanding, obviously, they're connected. Not rushing to his defense, but I do think there are a couple of things worth noting about, like, his history being indicative of what he'll do next, at least offensively. Drake May sometime next year is going to be the best quarterback he ever worked with. Okay, like when you're working with a Ryan Tannehill, Marcus Mariota, Malik Willis, you're going to keep them in a simplified conservative offense, because you just can't put the team on their shoulders. That said, the best year Ryan Tannehill had was actually pretty aggressive downfield offense. And in that wildcard game when the Patriots lost and Derrick Henry goes for 140 or whatever, A, of course, you're going to design an offense around your best player, who happened to be a running back. But B, their emphasis was on limiting those deep shots. And Arthur Smith was the head coach. So I do think it's in there. And what he's saying is like generally true. And there will be times to challenge him on this or ask him a little bit more about that philosophy. Maybe he changes his mind. And if it's Josh McDaniels, he can literally treat him as the head coach of the offense. Okay. And in a way that Josh has done before. So I think there's a lot to be determined in what the Patriots do. If you get T. Higgins and you draft a dynamite rookie receiver, well, of course you're going to throw the ball.
Yeah. But I think, I could be wrong. I think Tannehill only passed for like 70 yards in that game.
Yeah, because I mean, it was.
I know that
legitimately excellent defense.
Yeah, I know.
And so which again speaks to like the quarterbacks he had kind of stunk. Yeah. So I'm curious what he does if you give him new tools and weapons. How do you evolve if you do as a head coach? Like, this again was not great. I'm just willing to put that down in pencil of our evolving, growing Mike Vrabel file versus, oh, this is a commandment he believes in. If he's still doing that while Drake May has this Joe Burrow-esque season, you're like, just let Drake cook. Then I think there's a time to really hammer him and get on him. But like, I agree with you. I didn't love hearing that today.
Yeah, I should point out to that exact comment that we just put out there, that the 45, 50 times a game, Joe Burrow, who you just mentioned, led the league in pass attempts this year, and I think threw it 36 times a game. So it's just nobody's throwing 45 or 50 times. I don't know why you need to say that. You mentioned the OC. Was there anything left over you did not like here before we move on?
No, I was just curious, like things that we learned in the process, that press conference. Like, Vrabel indicated, if not just kind of said, I could have come back to New England as an assistant under Bill. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that. I thought, A, obviously the move paid off. B, that highlights the difference between him and Gerard and all the benefits of, like, you can't come home until you leave. And in that process, you know, whether it's like life after college or in coaching, you gain all the experience, you come back, you're better for it, was huge and something I don't think any of us knew. And then B, speaking of Bill, he's on Pat McAfee after the Vrabel press conference and just unending flowers. The man is just throwing at Mike. And they have a real relationship and they hit rocky spots. But like, Bill just goes on and on and on in a way in the 1 minute clip that was more positive than everything he had said about Gerard Mayo for obvious reasons over the last year combined. This
to me was a Gerard Mayo tweet. You know, this is a Gerard Mayo comment as much as it is. And honestly, I thought Bill, there's reasons behind it, but boy, he was pretty petty about this most of the year. I thought, talking about, well, our defense was pretty good last year, ignoring how many people were missing from it. And every chance he took to point out that it was not a professional organization being run there, I think he's gushing a little bit extra on Mike Vrabel's behalf. Doesn't mean he doesn't mean this stuff, but man, is he taking a victory lap right now over this, because I think he wanted nothing more than to watch C. Gerard Mayo fall on his face, and that is exactly what happened there. And I thought that was interesting. We did talk about other comments that Mike Vrabel made. We do want to get to those as well, and that includes one that he made to Tommy Curran, I believe, was it on their podcast. So we are going to talk about that as well. We're also going to talk a little bit about the OC and potential candidates here, and one that's off the board already that was mentioned and kind of might be clearing the path for what we believe might be the obvious choice. But before we do that, here's Andrew telling you about one of our other terrific sponsors here on the Pat's Interference podcast, and that, of course, is Game Time.
It's Game Time, the best secondary ticket marketplace you will find for one simple reason. They have a lowest price guarantee. I mean, you could do this even if you want to go to the Super Bowl. Find that exact seat. What's your view? Compare it to another one, but only at Game Time, where you get not only the seat view and the lowest price guarantee, but Game Time picks, where they give you all the best deals right up front, all in pricing. You don't even have to go searching for all these different deals. It's just the best of the best right there. You can find your tickets and go to the Super Bowl or any other event in less than 60 seconds. So what are you waiting for? Download the Game Time app today. Create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase in these lifetime memories. Terms do apply. Again, just create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, the best tickets, the lowest price guaranteed tickets to any game, concert, show, playoff, or regular season. Guaranteed. What time is it? Game time.
It's game time. It's game time. No, boy, was game time valuable during the last two Patriots home games of the year. You could have gotten in there for like a bag of nickels. But yeah, the price drops the closer you get to Game Time all the time, but boy, did it drop for those Patriots games. But the Celtics are around, and they're still interested. Check that out. Any concerts, anything else you want to see, download that app, create an account, use code CLNS, and you will get 20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Now let's talk about that other comment here. And again, I still can't wrap my mind fully around it here. And that was what he said to Tommy Curran, which was, and where is it here?
I'll just start reading because I have it here. So
here it is. Yeah.
Mike Vrabel does, as a lot of head coaches do. John did this last year. Main press conference, you do what's called a car wash. Just one-on-ones for 4 to 5 minutes at a piece with every TV station, big network, one right after the other. So he gets to his guy, Tommy. And Tom smartly asks about Eliot Wolf and what's going on and what he knows about him. And Mike says in the process of making a comment about Eliot, quote, having talked to Eliot and getting to know him through the interview process and then some over the weekend, there were some things that maybe didn't allow him to completely invest in personnel. Woo!
So what is, again, what's invest mean? Like that, let's break down the sentence. What does he mean invest in personnel? There's no way he's talking about the crafts here, right? He's got to be talking about, I'm reading this as maybe it's more to do with the collaborative process that didn't allow him to stop it, or that's the best I can get there. I highly doubt Vrabel's taking a shot at Kraft wouldn't give him money enough to spend, right?
So 2 things on this. Number one, if you just want to blankly believe this is another piece of evidence that the Krafts are too cheap, don't spend on the roster, and I know what the cash spending numbers are, I can't stop you. But if you want to think for a second and realize that on his first day on the job, that he would out his bosses like that voluntarily, you think Mike Vrabel's that stupid.
That's chance. What you
think. Number 2, you would then out the guy that you're working with, that just an hour earlier you mentioned 6 times by name, throw flowers at, and then out him in the process. So no, invest, I don't believe in this instance relates to money, because I don't think Mike Vrabel's that stupid. And again, you don't have to take my word. I think my word's pretty good because I worked a while to kind of build that up here in the market. But what I believe, based on what I've been told and in looking back, is what he was talking about was time. He couldn't invest as much of his time day to day in personnel. And here's an example. Last month, there were league meetings down in Dallas. Okay. Owners go down, GMs go down, agents are walking to and from, trying to get business done. They have league meetings aside from the ones at March that everyone watches and are televised, and I go visit. Eliot Wolf is not there. The Patriots sent Matt Groh for one of the biggest meetings, weeks of the year, especially in season. Why? I don't know. But I know I had multiple people texting me going, hey, why isn't Eliot down in Dallas? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I got to get ready for this Chargers game, Bills game, whatever it was. And to me, that said, he had to do more day-to-day dealing with a rookie head coach, rookie coordinators, young team, and everything that coalesced. Because we already know how much he put into this coaching staff and brought it and tied it all together, right? So if they're having issues, you're not going to the guy who'd only been in coaching for 5 years, even if that's Gerard Mayo's job. I bet, and we know this for a fact, Gerard spoke to him every single day. And I would bet it wasn't just about rosters and transactions. It was probably maybe how to do the job or things other than just scouting. And that's what Mike's saying here. He couldn't invest fully in just the personnel department and the scouting and look at that. That's just my sense. And looking at that.
Yeah. And again, if whether it's that or not, it's clearly not the first thing, which is what I think everyone took and ran with, that it was about the crafts. There's no, as you said, there's just no way he's doing that on day one. But yeah, wasn't able to do whatever was necessary to procure the necessary talent to put a better product on the field. Makes a lot more sense. You want to go to the OC thing? Because we could also talk about, there's another comment we did want to talk about with
we
Teddy
had news here
Bruschi
today.
Yeah, so we do have some news in terms of that, is that Tommy Rees, who was a name that was mentioned, Cleveland ties with Vrabel's last year in the Browns organization, was promoted to offensive coordinator, which means he can't be interviewed for the same position. And that was honestly the only name that had really gained any traction, it feels like, that wasn't Josh McDaniels. So Vrabel again confirmed, I think, again, in one of his many appearances recently, might have been today or one of those interviews yesterday. Josh is being considered. So we know that he's in the mix. We know there's familiarity, and we know that there's not a clear leading candidate here. Is this over? Are we done?
Not done. No, not done.
Are you?
But if you're
want it to be, yeah. Because we need more content, or I mean,
I just think Mike Vrabel is a good enough coach where if he wanted to pull an offensive coordinator, let's say that he respected and knew, and just called up and say, hey, do you want to come work here? Or an offensive assistant, whoever that might be, that person would pick up the phone and think about it for a minute. So if he has that kind of pull, and I believe he does, he's going to use that if he's any kind of smart. Because Josh McDaniels, as much as I would call him the odds-on favorite right now to get that job, and what's supposedly a long list, it might just be lip service because Mike knows he's got to interview 2 external minority and or female candidates for a coordinator job. And that's the process the Patriots are going to go through one way or another, that it behooves him to go through that interview process and do his homework. And Josh has not coached in the NFL, obviously, since middle of the 2023 season. But if you need someone who's had experience developing quarterbacks, running an offense on his own, and also being in that type of environment, let's just call it a Belichick-style system, even if obviously it's Mike Vrabel's program, Josh McDaniels checks all of those boxes. And say whatever the hell you want about his head coaching tenure, which was a disaster in Denver and then again in Vegas. Complete screw up. I don't think anyone could fairly call him an average to below average offensive coordinator. Like through the Mac Jones experience, getting the most out of that Cam Newton-led offense. We want to go all the way back to Matt Castle in 2008. Like, if that's the job, I think Josh McDaniels is qualified in this instance where you got a second-year quarterback, future of the franchise. I'd trust him. And the other names I'm thinking of, John, are really just like Tim Kelly, who was with him in Tennessee and before that in Houston. Todd Downing, who he fired before his last season as the head coach of the Titans and is now with the Jets. And, like, that's it. Because Tommy Rees is 32. And even, I don't know, as good as he is and respected and all that, that felt more to me like Kevin Stefanski wanted to take back control of his offense and not have a 32-year-old be the CEO of the offense. Because in Cleveland, that's Kevin Stefanski. In here, it would have been Tommy Rees. I don't know if a guy that young, even if he's been a quarterback and coached quarterbacks and now coached tight ends, is ready for that. He's only coached 2 seasons in the NFL, but that's the new Browns offensive coordinator.
Well, you mentioned going through the Rooney Rule process. Is it possible that they've already done this? And is it possible that the 2 candidates that they brought in to interview for head coach were really more kind of advanced vetting for Mike Vrabel's staff, and that could be Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich, because again, both have some OC experience. in the past, even though they haven't worked in the NFL recently. But I do wonder whether those were names that might have been
I don't think they can
put
double
forth.
as
Not
official
double as
interviews,
much, but you've already
but like
talked to them, and
fact finding.
you might have talked to them for a reason for fact finding. So I wonder if they're on the table.
So two reasons they might do that anyway, and I'm not taking them off the table because Byron Leftwich has got a good resume too. Now you need some overlap, some connection with the staff, and that he's only really been under Bruce Arians in Arizona and Tampa Bay, and never worked for anybody else. Number one would be, okay, you haven't coached the NFL since 2022. Let's at least get your name back out there and in the news cycle. I think it's a weak argument, but that could be part of the reason. The more convincing, persuasive reason to me, number two, would be a favor to the agent. Okay, hey, like, Mike Vrabel is represented by so-and-so. Let's say theoretically that guy represents Pep Hamilton and or Byron Leftwich. It's like, all right, we'll do the date and time that you want. Mike will come in, but first you got to get my other guys an interview. Sure. Oh, and by the way, it'll help you with the Rooney Rule. Not a problem. Like, that's been done before. I know with other franchises and other head coaches, and sometimes in New England, as a way to kind of bring them along. And I would bet that's true probably for one of two of them not reporting. But that's kind of the behind the scenes stuff and negotiation to kind of get that process where everybody feeds and eats a little bit.
Yeah. Any other buzz in terms of not just OC, but filling out the offensive staff? We'll hit defense quickly right after this, but any other offensive assistants you think might be either tabbed to come in and talk about the offensive coordinator position, or who might be able to just come in and fill some other roles? Yeah. And so does anybody on the offensive side of the ball with the Patriots stay?
Yeah, so I don't have, again, these are nuggets, like things that you continue to chase down, but hear enough from good sources that we can talk about here. Jason Hoteling was Mike Vrabel's offensive line coach his last year or two in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Before promoting him from being a low-level assistant with the Titans, he called Hoteling's interview one of the best he's ever done. Okay, so that guy, as I've heard, could be in the mix for the offensive line job. Internally, Mike Pellegrino, cornerbacks coach, I think he's got as good of a resume right now as anyone on that staff. You go to his first year, Stephon Gilmore wins Defensive Player of the Year. No, that was not Mike Pellegrino painting a masterpiece with a 24 jersey on. But you look at J.C. Jackson as a young player, Alex Austin, obviously Christian Gonzalez. I think Mike Pellegrino is a good coach. Brian Belichick, obviously connection there, might stick around. Who knows? But Tyler Hughes is someone that Vrabel did overlap with at Ohio State way back then. And we know probably not equipped to be a receivers coach, but if you need a low-level assistant, which he was in New England from 21 to 23 or 20 to 22, that's a guy who I think also could stick around.
Now, you talked about, I mean, we were wondering, would Eliot Wolf take a subordinate position after, getting that, first taste of sugar there at the top, as the big dog. I also wonder whether Alex Van Pelt, there's a world in which he remains in some capacity. He's already been in a place where, I'm not really the offensive coordinator. Stefanski's doing all of this stuff. I'm just kind of his valet. Could he say at this point in my career, I kind of liked hanging out with Drake, and if they'll have me back, sure, I'll hang out. I'll be quarterbacks coach. I'll do that, because if there's one thing you could point to, maybe he wasn't the most creative, innovative play caller in the world, but the one thing that wasn't a total disaster last year was the development of Drake May and his handling of it. So I do wonder, is there a world in which you could, why don't you hang around?
I don't think so, because I think if Josh McDaniels is hired again, we're going with the most likely scenario right now.
Yeah,
he's the quarterbacks coach. And I'll also say this, because it's not as simple as like, oh, well, McDaniels could be the offensive coordinator and Alex Van Pelt could be the quarterbacks coach. Two brains are better than one. The drills and philosophies that underpin how they go about their business are different. Like, one of the first drills all the quarterbacks were doing, in a very clear, easy example, was throwing into nets. Like a big net with 3 different holes in it, and guys warm up that way, and they're doing footwork drills that Josh never, ever, ever ran, as far as I know, covering the team dating back to 2018. Never saw otherwise. So there's stuff that's more West Coast. They'd have to mesh that, talk about it, agree, and Josh might just go, if you give me the job, I'll give you a couple assistants who can come with me. And Mike's like, perfect. But it's just a little difficult to mesh those. Though we'll see, because Alex Van Pelt's moved around a lot. It'll depend on his options. If this is the best option and they want to make it work, I would certainly try.
Sure. Before anything more on the coaches, because I do want to wrap it when we get to one of those comments and kind of a what does it mean sort of comment that was put out there by a former Patriot, Teddy Bruschi. I can jump on that now unless you had anything else on the coaching search.
No, I just say Mike. We're gonna find a way to like constantly refer to him. It's never gonna be coach, but Mike or Vrabel, and just settle on one for now. He's Mike, and Mike was saying, there's no timeline on this, and I think that's smart messaging, managing expectations. But the fact that he is the first head coach hired, and most teams are going to be waiting until next week to do in-person interviews, I think he's wisely using his time here, and it could be another 2 weeks before the Patriots do hire a coordinator. Who is it? I don't know. But I believe him as they continue to build out the staff. They contacted people today, this afternoon. It was the first time that they started. So that's where we're at, and we'll see where they go.
And you're not hearing Josh McDaniels tied to anyone else at this point. So again, if you think
local.
that's
he lives here, I think
I know if that's a safety net there where that's in the bag. So you'll do your search, you'll do your talks. But if you kind of know, my lead guy is already here. If he really is, it takes a lot of the pressure off there. And again, Vrabel being a defensive minded sort of guy, I think there's less pressure on the defensive coordinator and the defensive staff there than there is on the offensive side that you really want to make sure that you smash that one. Now we're talking about what does it mean? What did he mean when he took that shot at when he mentioned Eliot Wolf didn't have didn't invest, didn't get a chance to invest. What does this mean? This is something that Teddy Bruschi had said here I assume on ESPN, on NFL Countdown. There's going to be change. There's some people upstairs in the organization that want to be heard, and sometimes they're going to have to take a bite of humble pie and understand your opinion doesn't matter on this one because there are people in the building that know more. Is this a Jonathan Kraft tweet or a Jonathan Kraft comment? Who are we talking about here?
It could be Jonathan. The first person I thought of without any reporting on this. I just love that Teddy Bruschi is coming out firing. I feel like we haven't had this Teddy Bruschi in so long. He's just got like the rocket launcher under one arm, and he's just pulling and firing and goes and goes and goes.
Yeah.
Is Robin Glazer. And Robin kept a low profile at the press conference on Monday. She is someone who was named as soon as Gerard was hired, senior advisor to the head coach and executive this and that. She handles some contract stuff. She's not scouting. But she's also someone that was in charge and allowed to, paint and determine slogans that went on the walls of the facility the players and coaches walk by every single day. And if you're Mike Vrabel or, we'll go to the extreme, Bill Belichick pitched on, hey, this woman who's got a lot of business background and likes football and is close with the crafts wants to come in and we're going to put a little star next to all these big slogans. And this is what we're about now. You're like, get the hell out of here and then go even further away from me. So that's how I read that. Because Jonathan Kraft, again, say what you will about it. I'm not telling you how to feel about it. He's going to own the team next, right? Like he is the team president. So that person, whether he's earned the right or not, does have a say and an ability to dictate how the business goes. Robin Glazer, though, is a new person in our lives, relatively speaking, last year. And we know how last year went.
Well, that's the thing is, everyone's got to come in and wearing 15 pieces of flair, in order to work here. So, I mean, that stuff's not going to fly. And it is interesting how much closer to Belichick Vrabel's going to be in that kind of, I'm doing this sort of thing. And I mean, Belichick famously didn't even want Robert walking into his office, let alone Jonathan or someone like Robin Glazer. And again, some of the reporting last year was, a lot of people didn't love the process of interviews and how they went, and that it wasn't just Mayo in there. It was the Jonathan and Robin who's on the phone, and they're talking to people, and like any one of those people gets within a mile of any interviews with any incoming personnel here. And what's that going to be like? Because they got 1 year where they're like, oh, good, Bill's gone. We can do this stuff now. Let's put our fingerprints and stamp on the organization. And it's like, nope.
Notably, not included in this year's head coaching search. Robert, Jonathan, Eliot Wolf, Alonzo Highsmith, and that's it. And granted, they knew where this was going to go all along. It was Mike Vrabel or bust, and that was it was. And they were confident they were going to land him. But Robin was involved last year. Coordinators too. Not this year whatsoever.
Yeah. So it'll be different. It'll be different, but it'll be more of the same, just not what we had last year. A bit of a return to sanity and normalcy. But as we said, as Vrabel's kind of towing that line in between, he'll be nice to you, but he's still not going to tell you anything and he's going to.
He might not even be nice. There
won't.
There are good clips and tendency to media.
Oh my
Which is
God.
never what this was about, by the way. I know you're never going to convince people about that, but like if you thought I was cheerleading, and not me specifically, but certain media members cheerleading for Gerard and wanted Bill out so he would be nicer to us, like, hey, I've got much bigger problems in my life. B, I think all of us were fairly criticizing him not crushing Gerard by the end of the season. So when Vrabel pulls a Belichick at the podium,
which he will,
I'm not going to take it personally. I don't think most of my colleagues are going to take it personally. And if they do, I'll let you be the judge and read their work. But like that's coming, and I know it, and I think they do too.
I'm dating myself, but I covered those Patriots teams, all the way back to 2000, 2001, Belichick's first year, and when Vrabel here as a player, he smacked some people around in his locker too when he didn't like the line of questioning. So that's the kind of personality he has. It's not just the Tennessee clips. I've been in front of him. I'm like, I hope this guy doesn't make me feel bad. So yeah, a little of that's coming. It's your show, Andrew. Thank you for having me on it, but I'll let you close it out and take everybody home.
Yeah, I don't want to call you a riding cow and cuckoo bird, John, but you've done an excellent job here steering the ship and kind of weaseling your way in. Look, we are going to have more guests here on the show. John and I are actually going to talk about direction for the show this offseason. We'll have one more episode this week. There's a lot going on. It will simmer. Coordinator search is going to be a big part of this, but we're also going to go still a little bit more behind the scenes, and I think has some more players coming up. So we'll keep you posted. Thanks for hanging out. And as always, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, rate, review if you can. All the comments help. Algorithm boost, everything. If you like what we're doing, support the people that support us. Game Time, Prize Picks, all of it. And of course, let us know what you think in all those places I just listed.